Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs. Got a jam-packed show on tap for you today. First off, Stefon Diggs. Is he a diva? We'll break down some comments from a former wide receiver that played with him in the National Football League. Also, ESPN came out with their top 10 edge rushers list based on NFL execs and, anonymous sources throughout the league. So we'll break down their top 10 list. And I saw this interesting article from Aaron Wilson where he talked about Scruggs playing guard. Is that the possibility? Is that what we're going to see next year on this Texans offensive line? I'll break down those comments at the end of today's show. But to get it started off, I got to ask you, do you think Stefon Diggs is a diva? Be honest with me, because I've heard it from both sides here and there on whether or not, Stefon Diggs is a diva. He's too much. He's a locker room cancer. What do you say? We all know a diva is a female version of a hustler, but do you think Stefon Diggs is a locker room diva? Do you think he's a problem in the locker room? Let me know yes or no what you have to say. And coming up, I have some quotes from a very interesting interview that actually Landry Locker had with Cole Beasley. If you want to check out the whole interview, this is what the thumbnail looks like on YouTube. Highly encourage going to check out his content. Does a lot of good stuff revolving around the Houston Texans and Houston sports in general. So go give it a look if you want to check out the whole interview with the locker room with Landry Locker. But this is what Cole Beasley had to say in the interview when talking about Stefon Diggs being a diva. This is what he had to say. Steph is one of the hardest working players that I've played with. There have been a lot of guys that I've played with that don't want to practice, that they got an injury. That's kind of nagging them, so they're not going to do it today. He's not one of those guys. And I think so many people take Diggs being a passionate player, take him being a fiery individual on the sideline during games as him just being a bad teammate. And I think that couldn't be furthest from the truth. Everything that I hear from his former teammates, from his, former guys that he's played with in the past, they say he is an absolute grinder. And yes, we see him on the sidelines during games getting frustrated and showing that emotion. But, isn't that pretty normal of a person to be in a heated game like that, in a heated environment, and kind of show some of those emotions and not be emotionless? I know for me it would be super hard. I know he's intense. But he elevates everyone around him, and that is an absolute fact. We look at Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. This is his stats the year before Stefon Diggs and the year after Stefon Diggs. So 2019, before the Bills had Stefon Diggs, he had a 58.8 completion percentage, just over 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a QBR of 49.4. And granted, both of these years, Josh Allen played all 16 games. So equal stats here for you. The next year, 2020, the Bills traded for Stefon Diggs. This is his stats in his first season with Diggs. 69.2 completion percentage, over 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, a QBR of 76.6, and he was in the MVP voting for that season. So I think Stefon Diggs, you can say this or that about how he conducts himself on the sidelines and whatnot, him being a diva, but at the end of the day, he elevates his teammates. He elevates the team around him, and he is a damn good football player. You can't take anything away from Stefon Diggs on that level. And I think what he's going to bring to this team and what he's going to bring to this wide receiver room is going to be very electric. And I cannot wait to see his connection with C.J. Stroud and how C.J. Stroud is able to, spread out the targets, be able to target a guy like Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. I think the addition of Stefon Diggs is going to have leaps and bounds for this Texans offense going into 2024. Now, next up, ESPN, they have a top 10 edge rusher list that just came out, and they're going to do this with every single position on the football field. But they, get former NFL execs, former NFL GMs, former players, this, that, and the other, and ask them to rate their top 10 at each position. And for the edge rushers, one new Texan made the list, and I think you already know who that is in Danielle Hunter. This is their top 10 list. They have Myles Garrett at 1, TJ Watt at 2, Micah Parsons at 3, Nick Bosa at 4, Max Crosby at 5, and then you have Aiden Hutchinson, Danielle Hunter, Josh Allen, not the Josh Allen we were just talking about, the Jags Josh Allen, Trey Hendrickson, and Brian Burns. I want you to go down in the comment section and grade this list A, B, C, D, or F. Do you agree with this list? Do you think it's a good one? I think it's a pretty fair list. I'd give it a B, maybe maybe this is me being biased and working right next to our Raiders Report host, Mitchell Rins, but I think Max Crosby should be higher than Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons, in my opinion. But overall, I think it's a decent list. And Danielle Hunter being in the top 10, this is exactly why they brought him over to help this Texans pass rush. And this is what a high-ranking NFL exec had to say on Danielle Hunter in this article. This is what he had to say. The thing with Danielle is he'll continue to have 12 to 14 sacks for at least 2 to 3 more years if he stays healthy. He's that high caliber of an athlete that he should age really well. And, I mean, aging really well, we're talking about him being old. He's 29 years old. So, I mean, yes, in NFL standards, maybe he's getting up there in age, but he still has a lot of great football to play around him. And no doubt he is a top 10 edge rusher. I mean, look at his stats from last year. 83 tackles, 16 and a half tackles for loss, 16 and a half sacks, 23 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles on the year. Danielle Hunter was undoubtedly a top 10 pass rusher for the Vikings last season. And then, obviously, no Will Anderson, which is fair. He was a rookie last year coming into his second year, but he did make the honorable mentions list alongside Khalil Mack, Rashawn Gary, Hassan Reddick, Jalen Phillips, and Montez Sweat. So Will Anderson also getting a little bit of love in this ESPN article. This is what an AFC exec had to say on Will Anderson. He wins with power, instincts, and motor, not raw athleticism. Really good first year for him. And I couldn't agree more. Will Anderson was fantastic in his rookie season for the Houston Texans. And now we look at this new Texans defensive line with Will Anderson on one side, Danielle Hunter on the other, and then the 2 other free agent acquisitions, Danico Autry and Foley Futakasi on the inside. This is shaping up to be one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. And I think if we see the ascension that we think we're going to get from Will Anderson, and we get, I mean, at least 75% of what Danielle Hunter was last season, it could be a top edge rush duo in the entire league, and opposing quarterbacks better take notice. Now, next up, is Juice Scruggs playing guard? I know we've, talked about, different possibilities along the offensive line, and I even said maybe Scruggs plays guard because I really like me some Jarrett Patterson, but I had really thought after, minicamp, after OTAs, that it seemed that Scruggs was playing more at center, being more at the center spot. And then I read this article from Aaron Wilson just the other day, and then this part of the article really kind of made me take a step back and go, this is what Aaron Wilson had to say on the Texans offensive line. The Texans offensive line is headlined by Pro Bowl left tackle Laramie Tunsil and returns Shaq Mason at right guard, with Titus Howard expected to step back in at right tackle after dealing with a knee injury last season that required surgery. Second-year lineman Juice Scruggs is the projected starting left guard. Scruggs playing left guard. That contradicts a lot of stuff that I have been hearing this entire offseason about Scruggs moving to center and Kenyon Green stepping in at left guard, because this is my current Texans offensive line depth chart going into next season. I had Kenyon Green stepping in at left guard, Juice Scruggs stepping in at center, and then obviously the rest of the offensive line is the same from what Aaron Wilson said in the article. But it's really interesting that he said Juice Scruggs projects to be the starting left guard, because I think the sentiment around a lot of people who watch Texans minicamp, Texans OTAs, really thought Kenyon Green looked fantastic, looked in much better shape. Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryan said that he will get the opportunity to start at left guard. But if Scruggs is starting at left guard, that means Kenyon Green is definitely not starting and could be possibly a trade candidate moving into the preseason and training camp. And if Scruggs is playing at left guard, that means Jarrett Patterson more than likely is going to step up at center, which I'm okay with, because I thought Jarrett Patterson played extremely well for this Texans team last year in the 7 games that he did play. Allowed 0 sacks. The late-round pick out of Notre Dame really showed his stuff last year whenever he was called upon to play at the center position. So, I've asked you this before. Guess I got to ask you it again. Who do you think is going to play center for the Houston Texans this year? Do you think it's going to be Juice Scruggs, who's been getting reps at center this offseason but played guard last year in his rookie season? Or do you think it's going to be Jarrett Patterson? Type JS for Juice Scruggs, JP for Jarrett Patterson. Let me know your thoughts on who you think is going to be the Texans starting center next year. I've been going with Juice Scruggs the entire time, but I would not be mad at Jarrett Patterson starting. Like I said, I think he is really underrated, and I think he played very well in his rookie season last year for the Houston Texans. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to continue the conversation, if you want to hit me up on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. And as always, make sure you hit that sub button. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of this month. I need it to happen. We're just over 100 subs away. Help me hit that 15,000 number and help us continue to grow this Texans Today family. We are the best Texans channel on YouTube for a reason, because we have viewers just like you who made it all the way to the end of the video. So why not go down and hit that sub button?